Hi, and welcome to the next video. In this video, I'm going to be answering the question, why did I stay in Tianjin for so long? And like in some of the other videos, I've got my list, and I'm going to go ahead and go through it. And these things are not in any particular order, they're just reasons why I decided to stay there, or why I just stayed there for such a long period of time versus going and living in a different city in China. So, reason number one. Cost of living. Tianjin, unlike cities like Shanghai and Hong Kong, had at the time and might still have a very reasonable cost of living. If you're looking for an apartment, food, you want to go out and have a beer every so often or go to a nice restaurant, it's not going to cost you an exorbitant amount, generally. I remember my 3 different apartments that I had during the different periods in which I lived in Tianjin were all about 50 to 60 square meters in size. They were nice places for a single person to live in, and had basically all the amenities. They were all they were all pretty much furnished. Even my last one, had a bed, had a sofa, and I think a basic table, or they were going to provide a sofa, which I decided not to take, but that's a different story. And I didn't really have to buy as many things as when I was living in Japan and had to, buy an AC unit and futon and washing machine and so on. A lot of these places were ready to go, and the prices were reasonable. For example, first place I lived in, which was in Tianjin, I spent about 2,000, I believe it was either 2,250 or 2,300, around there, RMB a month. And so divide that by about 6 and change, and that's what the US dollar equivalent was, just for rent. And utilities were fairly inexpensive, whether it was internet or water or electricity and whatnot. So compared to here, where we're in June of 2022, 1-bedroom apartment here in Miami, not necessarily in the greatest of places, it's probably going to run you about $2,000 a month, just the rent. So cost of living was a big reason why I stayed there. It was reasonable. And if I had to do a apples to apples comparison, if I had moved to Shanghai, that same apartment, I'd have to go really far out of the city, have hour-plus long commute, and probably have to split that with another roommate because it's a big city. And Hong Kong, I'd have, a 10 to 20 square meter place. So it made sense to stay there. Second point, I had a support network. I had friends there, co-workers, acquaintances. It was, especially after that first year, a lot of my friends, just like a lot of expats experience, especially when you're teaching abroad, a lot of your friends are going to be your co-workers, students, people you're introduced to from either group or any other expats and other people that you meet during your time there. Well, I had a lot of friends there. Where I worked, the first place I worked at, the training center, teachers were all friendly towards each other. Most of us hung out, whether it was for dinner or holiday parties. Some of us traveled together. Same thing with the students. The students would invite you out to dinners, to karaoke, maybe to go check out a park, or show you parts of the city, or just kind of hang out, and eat. And, a lot of friendships developed from that. Some romantic, I won't lie. These are all adults, by the way. And so it was another thing that was keeping me there, is I had people there that I cared about and cared about me, and who I could share things with. So, going to another city was not appealing, because I'd have to start that process all over again. So, third reason, I had a good, stable job. I talked about one of the reasons I left to go to China was I was not very happy at my job and wanted to try teaching to see if it would be something I enjoyed, and found I did. And in this case, year after year, they would offer me a new contract, and school was happy with me. Students were happy with me. Obviously, the teachers were too. And I enjoyed the work. I loved it. So to then uproot and go somewhere else, unless I was going to work in the same exact conditions for the same employer, which at one point I did consider. I felt, I'm in a good place. Why would I want to start at zero again? Just like with my support network. The job was good. Enjoyed it. Keep doing it. Next point. Ease of travel. Tianjin was very centrally located, so to speak, in China. It was a big city, had an international airport, and as I mentioned in a prior video about visiting Japan, it was a 2-hour flight. So I had Japan 2 hours away, South Korea, if it wasn't 2 hours, it was not an excessive amount of time from there. Vietnam, I believe, which I traveled to later, was maybe 5 hours away. If I wanted to go to Thailand, which I still haven't visited to this day, it was accessible. If I wanted to go into Russia, prior to everything that's happening, obviously, it's also very accessible. Plus parts of China like Harbin, Xiamen, Hangzhou, Shanghai, they were all there. It wouldn't be 10, 12-hour flights. It would be 2, 4, maybe 5, 6-hour flights at most. So I could do a long weekend very easily. So that was another reason. Next reason. Romantic relationships. Several times during my time there, and not all at the same time before anybody gets any funny ideas, I had good long-term monogamous relationships with locals. And at least one of those, if not more, were relationships that were on track for marriage. So it kind of made sense to stay there because this person was there, maybe their family was there as well, so they had their support system. For all the reasons I mentioned above, I was hesitant to go somewhere because I've got all these good things going for me, plus a partner who, is marriage material and whose company I enjoy at all times. So it didn't make sense to go to another city and, kind of force this person to leave their home and, go through all the same stuff I went through, even though one could say it's kind of fair because I left everything. And I will say, as a side note, prior to me leaving China the first time, I had actually considered going to Xiamen or another city, and at the time my long-term girlfriend and I had discussed it. So it was a possibility. We had both considered going to another city, but because of the other reasons listed above, it didn't work out, or it didn't make sense at the time, or we weren't rushing to make that decision. Next point. Tianjin, from when I went there in 2011, September 4th, if I recall, was a big city. Much bigger than Miami, which I think we have, about 1 million-ish people now. Tianjin, when I first got there, I believe was a city of 13 million. When I left, was a city just over 15 million. It's a lot of people in a short amount of time. And as I mentioned before in one of my videos talking about construction in China, there was a lot of construction going on, more high-rises, theme parks, more subway lines. It just kept growing and growing and expanding, and the infrastructure was pretty good. It was very easy to get around, and eventually got share bikes, and so it made it even easier if there was no subway, or it was hard to get a taxi where you can get on a share bike and bike short distance where you need to go and leave the bike there. Or they would just, I'd go to one area of Tianjin, and maybe this old style mall that was there was demolished, and some new one had been put in its place that was fancier or had more of a variety of things, or old areas of the city that were maybe industrial sites from the heavy manufacturing days had become art zones, with rooftop clubs and cafes and different exhibits, or areas that were out in the boondocks where there was nothing, where they were working on transforming them into IT cyber hubs, or areas, or like the port that used to just be kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and it was all about oil industry and petroleum and manufacturing of different products and services. Were starting to put ecological areas, or eco city as they called it, in Binhai, and have a lot of green spaces, and make it a little bit more habitable for just average Joes. So I saw Tianjin change quite a lot during the time I was there, and it just kept growing and growing, and I thought, wow, Tianjin basically has anything you want in any major city, especially if you're a big city person and you need to have a certain amount of nightlife, or you need to have certain amenities. They were there, and they were expanding, so there was always something new and interesting to do. So it kept me entertained, and kept me doing a lot of urban exploring while I was there. Next point, and this is kind of related to something I said before, where I said the ease of travel. Well, in its own category, I'd say it's close to Beijing. And part of the reason I separate this out is Beijing at the time, I don't know about now, was a pretty happening place. There were a lot of hutongs, which are these old style alleyways that they have these old style housing, where the hutong, it refers to like the water well courtyard, where there would be water in the middle of this courtyard, and then the structures would be around it, and that's how people once upon a time used to live. And a lot of those structures are still there, very old brick buildings, very low, I should say, housing. And a lot of them were being converted into boutique hotels, bars, restaurants, a lot of nightlife, and you could just walk down these places day or night and find a little hole in the wall place, that served Greek food, or had Western food, or would have Japanese food, or would have some authentic Chinese type food from some region in China, or little boutique shops in the old art style of the architecture. Plus you had Tiananmen Square, and the museums, and the Forbidden City, and Jinan Park, and if you wanted to see the different things from different parts of Chinese history, Beijing was a great place to be. And there was, it was an international city. You had a lot of expats who weren't just teachers, but pilots, captains of industry, tech people, all that. Before Shenzhen started to be known for that. And sure, there were pilots in Tianjin as well. I knew of a few, but it was just an even bigger city, 30 minutes away by bullet train. And if there was something in Tianjin you felt there wasn't enough of, Beijing had it, in spades. Beijing duck is a fabulous dish that I, miss and love to this day. And one of my favorite places, Chuandude near Hohai, and Hohai in itself was a cool little place with this lake and a bunch of little bars and restaurants and shops, and all sorts of nightlife and activity going on there for pictures and just walking around. So that was another thing. If I moved to another city, I wouldn't have that, or I'd have to find that, in my new home. Next reason, and this is obviously a big one, and it's related to the support network, but I put it in a category unto itself. Friendly people. People in Tianjin are extremely friendly. extremely nice and polite. Now, again, there will be rude people, there will be xenophobes, and so on. But by far and large, I found most Tianjin people very welcoming, very nice, very easy to talk to, you know, have acquaintanceships with that would turn into friendships, some of which I still have to this day, and I still miss them very much. You know, it's sad that I don't know if I'll see them again, but I'll do my best to keep in contact with them because they're great people. And you know, so it's quite a different experience when you're in a foreign country or a different city, and everyone there is, you know, welcomes you with both, you know, both arms, and is, you know, very inviting, very familial, very nice. It's kind of hard to leave that. Even though I said I considered going somewhere else, you know, at one point, but that was more for issues about air pollution. Had nothing to do with the people. And so for this and all these other reasons, that's why I stayed in Tianjin 5 years the first time. And, you know, just shy of 2 years the second time. So almost 7 years in Tianjin. And looking back, if I had to do it all over again, I would have made the same decision to go to Tianjin. It's a great, great place to be in. Again, I don't know, well, I don't know all the specifics of what's going on now during this time and what that's going to mean in the future, but at least during the time that I was there, it was a great place to be. And I would certainly have moved there again if I had to do it all over again. Probably move there sooner too. Like, I know a lot of expats who were there prior to myself, obviously, by several years, who mentioned, I remember when the first subway line was built, or I remember when this particular place was set up, or I remember when this area was out in the middle of nowhere and there was nothing, and now it's just this mega city. In the future, I might do a whole video just dedicated to Tianjin, so we'll see. Anyway, that's the end of this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. See you in the next one.